morning.
I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
Smack-a-magab, it is time for the only news that matters on Kiss Wednesday. And Gene Simmons suggested that non-musicians part of the world doesn't care about virtuosos such as John McLaughlin, noting how he prefers music that is memorable. The idea that you don't need to be a God-given virtuoso to author some really memorable music isn't anything new. Rock history has been written with fairly straightforward tunes, while even Joe Satriani will tell you that great guitar players live and die by the plain expressiveness rather than their technique. Gene Simmons, whose bass playing career was defined by the idea of melody first and technique second, he told Guitar World in a new interview that he's not a fan of the show-offs in music. Yet, they hired Mark St. John for Animalize. Remember that? And Vinny was a show-off too. And Paul Stanley of Kiss was a show-off in the 80s, showing everybody how he could be a horrible second-rate David Lee Roth. But anyway, back to the story. You know, he told Guitar World that he's not a fan of show-offs in music. However, being Gene Simmons then took a pot shot at the entire jazz genre in order to illustrate his point. All right. By the way, his point is stupid. I would love to challenge Gene Simmons in this. I'd crush him. I would crush him. He says, I don't consider myself and was never really interested in being a bass virtuoso. I don't like show-offs of music. I'm more attracted to things that are memorable. It's part of the joy of music for me. You can be a jazz player and be respected by musicians, but the rest of the world doesn't care. We're going to play a game named a jazz player that means something. In an effort to illustrate, I can name several, but anyway, in an effort to illustrate his point, Simmons singled out the jazz fusion icon and all-around living guitar saint John McLaughlin. He said, how about John McLaughlin? He's a great player, but here's the question. Can you hum any melody that he's ever played on a solo? Of course not. All due respect, but the music is intended to show off how well you play. But I don't care about that. The hardest thing to do is write a good, simple song or riff. That's really hard. Yeah, I know, man. If you listen to Gene Simmons' Vault, you can see how hard it was and how hard he failed. The Demon then went on to name a couple of more examples from the ranks of his four-string colleagues, adding, there are an awful lot of amazing bass players like Jaco, Pistorius, and the Jazz Guys, or guys like Flea, who is really good on his instrument, but I can't remember anything he plays. Really, you can't remember the beginning of Higher Ground? Oh, and I also don't like the sound of a bass being slapped. There you go. The opening of Higher Ground is a bass being slapped. Quite well, by the way. Summing up his idea of the kind of playing he prefers, Simmons said, Clapton, before he went pop, and when he was considered God. You know, he was interviewed and he said something very profound. He said, the hardest thing to do is to know what notes to put in a solo and what notes not to put in a solo. Sometimes, if it's shockingly simple and barely moving at all, but I can hum it. That's what matters because it's memorable. All right, here's the thing. I mean, the things I do agree with Gene about is that, me and him have similar taste in music as far as, John McLaughlin and all that. I like John McLaughlin, actually. I love great technical players. Like Jaco Pastorius, I thought he was the GOAT, man. And he was the greatest bass player in my opinion. And Flea, man, I am not a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm just not. But I really do like that album, Mother's Milk. And I bought it because of the song Higher Ground, the bass slapping in the beginning. I loved it. Everything after that, and before was terrible too. In my opinion, I'm not a fan of Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm just not. But that's a bad example that Gene is given with Flea, because Red Hot Chili Peppers have many memorable songs for the masses, all about California. I may not be a fan, but shit, Red Hot Chili Peppers played a stadium down here. Hey, I don't think, Jaco could, or, McLaughlin. But I think Flea, even though I'm not a Chili Peppers fan, is a bad example to bring up. Yeah, Jaco is amazing, the GOAT. Another one that I really love is Victor Wooten. Victor Wooten, I can listen to that guy play a million times. I've seen him several times, own some of his albums. I love to chill out to some jazzy stuff like that, and he slapped the bass, and so did Jaco, and I dug it. I didn't hate it. But the thing is that, and it's not only Gene Simmons, so many people put importance in the rest of the world, the masses. I think the people that bring up masses, most are hypocrites. I saw Gene Simmons get interviewed once by a guy that was wearing a Behemoth shirt. And then Gene Simmons said, yeah, nobody knows them. You gotta, good music is when a lot of people like it. He actually said that. And then the host said, Justin Bieber? And then Gene said, hey, people like him. Yeah, but do you like him, Gene? Give me a break, man. Just because it's popular, it's supposed to be good. But Gene's not alone. There are so many people like that. Like, unfortunately, we just lost Paul Di'Anno. And there's people leaving comments like, they would have never been big if Paul stayed in the band. Which is like, you're wrong. Or you may be right, but you don't know. I personally think they could have been bigger with Paul. Paul had an awesome voice. People think he doesn't, but it doesn't matter in the end. What matters to me is the music. I have albums that I worship that sold much less than Milli Vanilli, or Debbie Gibson, or Tiffany, New Kids on the Block. Does that make them better because they got more mass appeal? I mean, that's some bullshit right there, but that's all Gene cares about. After all, he would never praise The Elder because The Elder didn't sell. If The Elder did sell to the masses, that would have woke his ass up saying, hey, a lot of people like it, therefore I should as well. I don't get it. Personally, I just don't understand it. And on the other hand, I love what, I'm slamming Gene for his vault. But Gene has wrote some awesome songs that were very simple. And I do appreciate simple more than, the technical shit. I do. My favorite albums, like, Nevermind the Bollocks and the First Kiss album. And, well, Gene does some great bass playing on the First Kiss album. Let's say Rock and Roll Over, which there's cool runs on Ladies Room. But either way, I mean, it's not technically awesome. But I prefer that to, some jazz fusion shit that I love. But the thing about the jazz fusion, the Jaco, the Victor Wooten, I have to be in the mood. I have to be in the mood to listen to it, where I'm more in the mood to listen to something simple, But then, I love Rush too, It's a yin-yang thing, man. There's a lot of simple music I love. There's a lot of technical music I love. But, man, I got to say, man, I would put the simple above the technical. But that is my opinion. And there are so many people out there, Gene Simmons from Kiss, that worship John McLaughlin and Joe Satriani and Jaco more than Kiss, and that's their opinion, Oh, but Kiss is more popular, therefore their music is better. Bullshit. That is bullshit. Only stupid people think that way. No offense, but a lot of you people are stupid when you bring up, oh, they were bigger, like Hagar fans, like Sammy Belcher fans bring up, oh, Vangina was bigger with Sammy. They weren't. They were bigger with Dave, but if you prove that to them, they'll avoid it like the plague, because they like Sammy more. So they have to bring up the fact that they think Sammy was bigger, and they're thinking wrong. For them to say, oh, all their albums were number one. Yeah, they were number one because the masses bought those albums on the first week. But then the masses also bought the David Lee Roth stuff even more than the number one albums. But to them, number one albums mean so much. It means so much because it's a popular, trendy, massive thing. But when Debbie Gibson's album went number one, does that make it good? If Jay-Z, Beyonce, who have you, are number one for more weeks than the Vangina albums, does that make it better? It's better to me, but I'm talking to you Vangina fans that care so much about number one albums. Vangina was up on the number one, a week? Maybe two the most. Where Jay-Z and Beyonce are top of the charts for months. Does that make it better to you Vangina fans? No, it doesn't, because you're hypocrites. You'll use number one as an excuse of good music. But you see these other bands that you do not like, you can't get into, and you do not find to be good music, stay in the number one slot longer. You still don't think it's good music. So when I say, Vangina sucks, and you say, well, they had number one albums, you're an idiot, and you're a hypocrite. Gene Simmons is one too. We all know it. Him and Paul Stanley of Kiss. They're always bashing on Kiss albums that didn't do well, and then, but if they did do well, they would be, glossing it. Like they gloss Destroyer now. Gene and Paul are always praising Destroyer. Destroyer, one of our greatest studio albums, blah, blah, blah. But when it was a new album, it flopped. And they ran to the studio to save themselves with Rock and Roll Over. And while they were doing that, then Destroyer blew up and became huge. And then Gene and Paul were like, oh, I guess we like it now. But I've read that they were actually, I don't know if it was Gene or Paul, one of the two were mad at Bob Ezrin because what he did to Destroyer before Beth made it huge. So there you got proof right there of Gene Simmons from Kiss being a hypocrite, man. Loving Destroyer because it sold a lot. But if it would have flopped, he'd be bashing it like he bashes the Elder today. By the way, I'm not perfect, man. I'm human. But Jesus Christ, I'm not this bad. I can prove I'm not perfect. I would rather listen to Kiss over jazz, over Victor Wooten, over Jaco Pastorius, definitely over Red Hot Chili Peppers any day over that. So you see, I'm not perfect, to you douchebags that think you know what good music is. I only know what good music is to me, not to anybody else, okay? If you all don't like what I like, I understand it. You got different tastes in music. Just like I don't like what you like in a lot of things. It's just the way it is, man. And I love Jaco and Victor Wooten. I love all that stuff. But if I had to choose, I'll take Kiss. I don't know. Whatever. What do you all think? In the comments below, please leave them. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I really would appreciate that as well. So, yeah. Again, like the video. It's good for the YouTube algorithms. So stay frosty. Listen to Kiss Alive instead of the Red Hot Chili Peppers songs about California. I'm only saying that because I care about you. And smack 'em a gob.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies.
Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.